Hello, it's time to be well with your health. I'm Nimit.
And I'm Tina.
Welcome to Adventist Healthcare and You podcast. Today we have a special guest host with us. You may recognize her from past episodes. It's great to have you back, Tina.
It's great to be here, Nimit, and especially on such a doggone fun episode like we're going to have today.
So we're very excited to welcome our 4 guests today, 2 who are 4-legged. We're catching up with a couple of past guests as they have someone very special to talk about and introduce since their last visit. We're going to take a deep dive into facility dogs and the role they have in patient care.
I am so excited to be here with the facility dogs, and they are laying so peacefully at our feet right now, but they are so excited to be here, and they are celebrities when they walked in today. And so we're going to have a great conversation with our handlers, and maybe later we can hear from them directly. So Nimit, why don't you introduce the experts who are going to tell us a little bit more about the dogs?
Absolutely. So we have Dr. Heather Tropiano, who is a rehab psychologist. She works in the Department of Neuropsychology and Rehab Psychology at Adventist Healthcare Rehabilitation. And then we also have Colette Calameras, who is an occupational therapist, and she works at Adventist Healthcare as well in the rehab, and wants to introduce a very special guest with us, who is Marcy. Marcy is one of our newer dogs, who's a canine companion facility dog working at Adventist Healthcare Rehab. And then we have our returning guest, Peru, who's also another facility dog. You guys may have known her from our last talk. Thank you for coming here.
Of course, we're happy to be here. So I've had Marcy for about 3 months now. I went to Long Island to go get her in February and came home with the most special gift. So she's excited to be here and joining the podcast as well.
We're excited that she's making her debut on the airwaves with us today.
So I know we covered a lot of this last time, but just to refresh our memories, what is a facility dog? What impact do they have at Adventist Healthcare's staff and patients, and how do they assist in the well-being?
So a facility dog is a dog who is basically on staff at our rehab hospitals. They are dogs who are trained to incorporate themselves into interventions with the therapist. So Dr. Tropiano and I have different roles at Adventist, but the facility dogs are able to kind of match what we need, match what the patients need, and help them out however they can in their rehab. So there are also facility dogs who are in places like police departments, schools, court systems, but we're lucky enough to have them in our hospital.
The last time we recorded about the facility dogs, I know you mentioned that you were excited for Rehab Rockville to receive a facility dog because you wanted to try the facility dog with the amputee population, which is a big concentration of the facility over there. Have you been able to do that since getting Marcy, and how is that going?
Honestly, we have not had any amputees since getting her, so as excited as I am, I'm still waiting for that. She has gotten a chance to work with a lot of patients who have experienced stroke, which is another interest of mine and another population we see a lot at Rockville. So she's been a big motivator for people to use their hemiparetic sides.
That's something Peru is well-versed at doing, right, Dr. Tropiano?
Yeah, so we both use them for stroke. Stroke is something I think that we see a lot on our inpatient unit. There's a lot of stroke patients at a given time, and I think these dogs are really helpful when it comes to rehabbing someone with a stroke because they're trained in tasks to help that patient use their weak side, whether it's arm or leg. And so they come in really handy with that population. We use them in very similar ways to incorporate into patients' rehab to help them work on a certain goal. So it's, we use them in similar ways. Colette, though, is a therapist, and so she, I think, sometimes has more creative ideas to use Marcy within her individual sessions.
So given that Marcy was just introduced to the facility recently, what kind of training do they go through? What kind of training does any facility dog goes through? And, coming to a new environment can be challenging for them too. So what goes into all that?
So she basically has been trained since birth. So she was born at a breeding facility in California. Once she was 8 weeks old, she went to her puppy raiser in New Hampshire, where they started teaching them basic commands. So things like sit, stay, hurry, etc. Once she went to her professional training, which is about 9 months long, she starts to work on those higher level kind of tasks. So picking up a credit card from the ground, pushing the elevator buttons, doing kind of those more challenging tasks. So she had about 9 months of that professional training, but they were, assessing and seeing how she is doing with all of those things basically since birth. And then in terms of me introducing her to the work environment, I had 2 weeks in New York, just me and her, before anyone, was able to really meet her. Mm-hmm. So we were able to really strengthen our bond. I kind of pushed everyone away. My husband wasn't allowed to walk her. I, for the first month or so, probably was the only one walking her, really trying to strengthen our bond. And once that felt pretty strong, I became, a little more lenient with who can hold her, who can run with her, who can feed her, all of those kind of things. And then the staff at Rockville have done a really good job of, making sure she's always comfortable. If she doesn't like a certain sound, people will stop a certain activity.
Yeah. They're just mindful about that.
Oh, yeah. And, they've all seen how positive of an impact she can have. So everyone seems really willing to adjust and accommodate. People moved their desks so she could have a crate in the back. So it's been really sweet to see.
A positive experience.
A very positive experience.
And I have to say, Colette did a really great job at orienting Marcy to the unit, right? So just like every new employee, they don't just jump into patient care right away. They have to get used to the environment. They have to learn within the specific setting. They have to get to know their coworkers. So Colette and I planned for, Marcy just to kind of for the first week be on the unit and get to know what it was like to be in her crate, then be out of the crate, take walks around the unit, just learn the routine and learn the environment. And then the second week, Colette had planned to, incorporate Marcy in 1 treatment session a day. And then the third week was 2. And so building up her ability to work too, and also making sure that she was comfortable and able to perform her job. And I have to say the staff at Rockville did a really, really good job at respecting that, because it's, just like you saw earlier, you see a dog and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I just want to, but it's hard because when these dogs are working with patients, they really have to have their sole attention on that patient to be able to do their job. And so I think, Colette has done a really good job at modeling what that looks like and how to advocate for Marcy to make sure that she's given the opportunity to do the best work that she can. I say that as she's on her back with her paws in the air over there.
She's loving the pets next to me.
I'm sure.
Dr. Tropiano, how long has Peru been part of the Adventist Healthcare family?
So she started in 2020, September of 2020. So she just turned 7. So she's been here for 5 years now, which is kind of crazy. It's gone by in the blink of an eye.
It really is remarkable. Yeah. But I would imagine it's so helpful to Colette to have you as the trailblazer in having had the experience of acclimating a facility dog and bringing it on board. And as you said, getting the staff used to this is a working dog and these are the boundaries. So tell us a little bit about the wisdom you've been able to impart and how that's gone.
I think one of the things we learned when I had brought Peru onto staff it was then Tacoma Park, was that education was really important for the staff. And I did some of that before she came, but just because there are a lot of people, it's a very diverse setting that we work in. So lots of different people from lots of different areas of the world where dogs aren't necessarily pets are helpful. They could be rabid or they could be protection or they, or something that is dangerous. So one of the things we did was, provide lots of education prior to Colette going down to New York. And so, training the staff on this is what a facility dog is. These are the rules of engagement. The dog, just like you, has to have downtime. So you can't be with them 24/7. We also, to model kind of what the process and the flow was going to look like from a clinical perspective, we had brought Peru onto the unit. I think we were doing it once or twice a week for a few months, so that the therapists and the physicians can kind of get a sense of, okay, these are some of the skills that they have. This is the patient I'm working with. How do we kind of plug and play and use the skill for the patient to work on a specific goal? And so just by doing that, I think the staff really got a good kind of orientation of, okay, when the dog is in the gym and my patient wants to say hi, we can't necessarily go over to the dog and, oh, I didn't know, they were able to do these things. And so just for people to kind of get an idea of how to work with the dog on their team, and then also how the dog's skills can work with them to help their patients too. So I think those were two big things that we did initially to help with the transition.
Yeah, I agree. I think just having the experience at Tacoma Park and White Oak was really helpful to make the program successful at Rockville. I kind of joke that I get all the glory of it with not having to go through any of the trailblazing action. So I'm very appreciative for all of that. And, there's definitely the formal things and the education that have been really helpful, but there's also the kind of crazy dog mom things that is really helpful just to have another, person who understands what it's like to have this dog bonded to you 24 hours a day and, tell me I'm not crazy sometimes.
Yeah, because you're with them more than you're with your spouse, right? They're with us morning, noon, and night. And so it's definitely a different type of a relationship that you develop.
And I think it was a two-pronged approach, right? You prepare the dog and train the dog, but also you prepare the staff and the hospital just to ensure that you have expectations aligned, that the dog is coming. How can they interact with your patients? How can they interact with you? What can you do for the dog to make them comfortable? So I think having that multifaceted approach is definitely very helpful.
Yeah, and then also, one of the big hurdles that I still face, and I know Colette has been experiencing too, is really reinforcing education about facility dog is not a therapy dog. Like, one's a working dog and one's a dog that comes and visits and says hi. So that's, also something that we've been kind of just continuing to reinforce too, so...
Can you walk us through a day of Peru and Marcy's work day and downtime day? Like, how does that get differentiated? And what does a typical day look like?
So for Marcy, she comes in with me around 8 o'clock. She lays at my feet and asks everyone for belly rubs while I chart review until about 8:30.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm doing
currently. Yep. She sees her first patient from 8:30 to 9:30. So this will typically be a more OT ADL focus session. So focusing on activities of daily living. So if there's someone who's, relearning how to put on their shirt or something like that, Marcy will come in and kind of help with those ADL sessions. She'll have downtime until 10 o'clock, and then we see another patient for a 30-minute session. She hangs out until lunchtime. During lunch, she, goes around asking for more belly rubs, and then she sees one more patient in the afternoon, and then a little more downtime before we leave around 4. When we get home, she usually passes out on the couch pretty immediately. We'll go for a walk or, throw the ball, but she's pretty exhausted after a day of work.
And there's a lot of interaction, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, getting belly rubs is probably great too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's her favorite.
We were saying prior to the recording, it's so fun to see the dogs interacting together.
Yeah.
And I would imagine there's a lot of similarities, given that they both have the same job, but they're different dogs, right? So what have you observed? What are the similarities? What are the differences? Is there a type of work that one prefers and the other doesn't, or a type of job one does that one doesn't? And tell us a little bit about what you've noticed.
That's a good and a fun question, I feel like, because one thing that I've really noticed that Canine Companions does a really phenomenal job at is the match, right? So they'll match the dog to the handler. And I think Marcy's the perfect match for Colette because Colette is very spunky and has a lot of energy. And so Marcy is that way too. Like she's happy to see everyone all the time and she's here to work. Whereas Peru is she's more subdued, I think. She has a professionalism about her. And, she is older, so there's that kind of difference with the two of them as well. But personality-wise, it's so interesting because these dogs are so well-trained and they have the same training. And so behavior is the same to a certain extent, but then they have their own personalities too.
For sure, right? Peru's roaming the room right now, getting pets from our team that's in here. And Marcy's still chilling with Nimit.
Legs up in the air.
Yep.
So there's definitely some differences we're observing here.
Have you noticed, Colette? Have you noticed anything else?
I feel like it's more of the age that I notice. Like Marcy loves to jump and play balloon volleyball with patients. And I think Peru did at one time, but it's just a little bit harder on her now. Yeah, you call Marcy and she runs a lap around you before she comes to your side. Peru goes right to your side. So I think like the spunk is definitely one of the major things. Peru will sit on your lap also, which is Marcy won't do, and I have a major qualm with. But
Colette, what's it been like working with the patients and with Marcy? Like, how, as a therapist, has that made a difference to your work, and what have you observed in the patients?
It has definitely been a little chaotic at first. I wish I had a few extra hands. That would really help. But Marcy has been such a good motivator through it all. And, to see her working with the patients and to hear some of the things that they say after working with her, to see them do things they've never done before now just because Marcy is in their presence, has been, the motivation to get through any of these days that have been a little bit harder or a little bit more challenging. It's more documentation, I'm running around a little bit more, but to see the outcomes that people are having because of her and to feel this bond that I really have with her have really been incredible. I never imagined my OT career would lead me to being a dog handler, but I'm very thrilled that this is the outcome. Now I'm getting pawed.
I'm sure many of our listeners will want to get to OT now because they would want to have a dog.
Yes, yeah, it's a possibility.
What are some of the things that you hear from the patients?
Yesterday we had a patient who we wanted to practice fall recovery with, and he was, the whole time, there's no way I can do this. I can't do it. I'm in pain. He got down onto his knees. No, I can't do it. And then I told him, oh, well, we can put a strap on your gait belt and Marcy can help you stand up from the ground. Marcy is pretty tiny and cannot actually really help this man stand up from the ground. But her just being there, he was able to get up, no problem.
Wow, that's great.
And he's like, oh, yeah, Marcy helped me do it. He saw her again today and was like, should we get back on the ground again? Just things like that. I've had patients who say they miss their dog so much. And, just to see have a dog in their presence makes them instantly happier, or just how thrilled they are to interact with a dog again after, possibly months of being away from their own animals.
So I'm sure both Peru and Marcy have big responsibilities on their shoulders. So how do you ensure that, their well-being is taken care of and they're not being burnt out? And what steps do you take to ensure that they're, well taken care of?
One thing that I think Canine Companions does really well is teaching us about how to read the dogs. I grew up with a dog, but I didn't know all of these things. I can really get a sense of when she's tired, when she's done with an activity, when she needs a break. So just that education on how to read them has been really helpful. Another kind of wisdom piece I got from Dr. Tropiano was don't have all 3 of Marcy's sessions in the morning, but we spread them out throughout the day so she can, take breaks. I tried to not really do any commands over the weekends or when we get home. She's still supposed to be a well-behaved dog, but I'm not drilling her with commands or having her do certain things when we get home. So trying to just let her be a normal dog at home.
So what's she like at home?
She's still pretty goofy, still loves her belly rubs. She is a little more...
She scratches herself.
She scratches herself. She's a little more of a couch potato at home.
I'm sure she's exhausted.
Yeah. So
it's
it's well deserved. She's a little lazier than I anticipated. Seeing her at work, you're like, oh, this dog must never sleep. But she gets home, she puts her head on the pillow, and is usually out for the night.
She was made for her job, for sure. I mean, she's just been such a good asset and has really changed some lives over there at Rockville already. I was just thinking when you had asked Colette about what are some of the things that the patients say about that gentleman who was really frustrated working on the fine motor.
Mm-hmm. We had a gentleman who had a stroke and had been working on buttons with one of his therapists, and he could not get it. He kept telling her, I don't want to work on this. And Marcy has a vest that has buttons on it. And he sat there for the 30-minute session and did the buttons with her the whole time.
Wow.
And was saying, this was making me so frustrated before. I couldn't even work on it. And now just having, the vest was just on top of Marcy. She wasn't even really doing anything except providing some motivation. And he was able to get it.
It's just remarkable. And I know, Dr. Tropiano, when you were here last time, you talked about a lot of the research on just how big of an impact the dogs make.
We actually just got accepted to present a poster at AMRPA in the fall for our research, so we're excited about that.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, we're still waiting to hopefully hear back from a journal about publishing the research that we did with Peru and the impact that she has on patient performance. And with now Marcy expanding the program, we would love to redo the study that we did initially with Peru, but now with 2 dogs at 2 different sites. which would help kind of generalize our findings as well. But yeah, because these guys, are such an active, integral part of someone's treatment and working towards a goal, I feel like the researchers are so important, and there's such a gap in the literature because no one really researches this. So it's exciting for us to be able to do it. And I think it also just helps kind of quantify and illustrate how much these guys do help, right? Because anecdotally, we have story after story, and I know Colette already, although she's been working with Marcy only for a few months, has seen so many positive impacts of her, but it's just really nice to be able to scientifically prove it.
How common is it for a facility to have a facility dog, a facility like our hospitals?
Yeah, I think it's not super common. There are like the bigger research hospitals across the country, like Kessler and Baylor and Craig, they have facility dogs. I'm not sure though, and Colette and I have had this conversation, how the dogs get used in other sites, because we really work our dogs. Like, we have schedules for them. We make sure that, the therapists are using them in a certain way. So to answer your question, it exists. It's not super common, but I think we're definitely unique in how much we really incorporate them into someone's rehab.
It's terrific in a community setting like ours that we can give people access to this type of treatment.
Yeah, and it's also great too. We were talking about this the other day. Like, we've had patients where a service dog would be really helpful for them to be able to live their life as independently as possible. And so when patients, say patients with spinal cord injuries or neurodegenerative illnesses like MS, when they see some of the things that these facility dogs can do, Colette and I then have a really kind of unique role to be like, this can help you. Would you consider finding out some more information? And I've actually had a patient or two go through the match process and get matched with the dog, and it's, completely changed their life. So that's another cool part of being a handler too.
That's terrific. One question I had was, how do you decide which patients get the dog as part of their treatment?
So at least at Rockville, we kind of offer it to anyone who's interested. If the therapists think it would be appropriate, they'll sign their patient up to work with Marcy. When I have her breaks, they'll also, sometimes we'll just walk around the gym a little bit, and if anyone is like, oh, I want to pet that dog, I'll kind of come over and talk and say, hey, she's working right now, but would you be interested in a session with her? So a little kind of marketing for myself there too. But really the therapists are the ones who kind of facilitate it. And like Dr. Tropiano said, I hear like the best voices in my head. I'm going around and they're saying like, she's a facility dog. She's not just a therapy dog. And I'm like, yes, good job, Cassidy, or good job. Thank you, Morgan. They all really are like reading it out of a textbook almost. It sounds like they have the best definitions, and I guess we trained them pretty well too.
We have some great ambassadors,
Yeah.
and I had the privilege of being there for the baby shower, so I know
Puppy shower.
Sorry, get
You
the
can't tell my
terminology
mom I'm having a baby shower.
Okay, Mom, settle down. That's not what we're doing here. But a puppy shower at Rockville Rehab before we welcome Marcy over there. And it was just quite lovely. And it was, I thought, just a great way to get the staff engaged and excited and start building that proper vocabulary and getting them used to everything. And I can imagine they were just so thrilled when it was announced that it was Marcy and Marcy arrived, and it's evolved from there, right?
Oh, yeah. Everyone has welcomed her with open arms, and I have millions of people asking me if they can take her on a walk, or can she lick their yogurt cup? Can they have a carrot? Anything and everything is now surrounding Marcy. I walk in the morning and I'm chopped liver, and everyone is greeting Marcy, but it's worth it to see her little butt wiggles.
That's terrific. What do you think the future of facility dogs are in terms of expanding the program or sort of embedding them into more facilities? Talk a little bit about that. Where do you think this could go? Where do you think it should go?
I mean, I'm definitely hoping to do some research with Marcy as well. I think, kind of going back to your earlier question, one of the unique things, I don't think there's too many facility dogs with neuropsychologists or occupational therapists. I feel like typically the facility dogs go with either child life specialists or recreational therapists. because I know when I, try and research anything in terms of OT and facility dogs, it's a very, very limited scope. So I do hope to do some research with her, and I hope our program will continue to grow and Marcy can continue to make more friends.
Yeah, I would like a dog for every room on the rehab.
Nice.
Welcome to rehab. This is your facility dog.
Take care of it.
Yeah, he or she will be helping you meet all your goals. No, I think it's been such amazing opportunity to expand to Rockville, and I think Colette is beyond what anyone could have ever imagined in terms of being such a good handler and incorporating Marcy in such creative ways. I would really like to see one more dog in each of the rehabs. I think to have 2 dogs would be great, especially for White Oak since we are a 42-bed unit.
Are there any plans to? Maybe.
I mean, it depends. There's a lot of moving parts that go into it. So I would love that. I would also love to expand to outpatient at some point. But I think we just kind of have to wait and see. I think, it's been awesome to get Marcy on board. And I think the more that people see how much these dogs can do and how much it can benefit patients, I'm hoping that, the program will just continue to grow. So
yeah.
And both of their schedules are jam-packed. So, there's definitely a need. And
a wait list for them.
Yeah, no, there's really wait lists for patients to get on the list to work with them. So the more dogs, the merrier, I think.
Yeah, it's been so interesting, too, because we've had patients coming onto the unit that have said, I chose this facility because you guys have a dog.
Wow.
I can't even tell you how many times I've heard, and in my mind, I'm like, I mean, I know I would do that if I was a patient. That's because I'm a crazy dog person, right? But it just blows me away, really? You chose this facility. And so, yeah, just to kind of speak to your point, I think growing the program would be amazing.
Well, and I think it speaks to Adventist Healthcare's holistic approach and trying things that really resonate on different levels with the patients, physically, emotionally. I think, as we know, people love dogs and really respond to dogs. We've seen it all afternoon here with both Marcy and Peru. And the results of your research speak to that as well. So talk a little bit about the expense involved with having a facility dog. What is the cost of introducing the dog to the facility, the cost of maintaining the dog at the facility, and how we fund that?
We're really lucky because Canine Companions offers these dogs free of charge.
Oh, that's great.
Which they are estimated to be between 50 and 55 grand once they get placed with a handler like Colette and myself. They breed the dogs, they pay for all the veterinary bills, they do professional training for 6 to 9 months. I mean, so it's a big expense, but they are considered a pretty large gift, right? So once they're matched here, I think, it's the monthly cost of as they're roaming around.
They're running around.
Looking for any attention. It's the cost of, the food, the pet insurance, some of the supplies that we need monthly. So I think, the cost of the program is not that much, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 a year or so. Maybe I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but I think it's a very small cost in comparison to the payoff Adventist receives from it.
And for those who are listening who don't know the role of Canine Companions, can you just briefly explain their connection to the program?
Canine Companions is one of the leading service dog organizations in the country. So Canine Companions trains facility dogs, service dogs, and that is who Dr. Tropiano, I'm assuming you researched different organizations and went with Canine Companions as your top pick. So that's just the organization that we kind of now have a partnership with.
I like it.
If I can.
We never miss a pun here on Adventist Healthcare and You podcast. Podcast for this episode for sure. There is a fund, right, that helps us with the cost of the facility dog.
Yeah, the fund is for research because to work with the statistician to crunch some of these numbers that we get from the research that we do is very expensive. So that, and then, buying out my time, Colette's time if she does research. We had a physical therapist at White Oak that was very instrumental in helping the research. So there's a lot of there's a lot of costs associated with being able to do research and then being able to disseminate it too. So yeah, that's more so what the fund is for. But
I see.
And I think the stories you shared about some of the patient stories and the outcomes, I think that speaks volume, right? You know, people want to be here and people want to take that extra step to get up or put their buttons on, you know? Like I think there's so much value in that and it's hard to quantify that. But I think the stories you shared is so helpful to like portray the picture.
Yeah. And I think, you know, some of the things that we found through the research, and I'm sure Colette is seeing this anecdotally, is that these guys are such a good active distraction for someone who is dealing with pain or, you know, fatigue or anxiety. A lot of the patients that we see are in the most vulnerable times of their lives, like having a stroke or having a brain bleed or spinal cord injury, right? Something that's happened to them. And you know, so doing things like standing or using an arm that's been impacted could be really painful and really scary. And so, but when they're with the dog, you know, it kind of just takes their mind off of it and they're able to do things that they weren't able to do before. So
how fun is your job now compared to what it was before you had Marcy at your side?
It's really been I guess if I say it's a 180, I didn't like my job before, but I really did.
That's a tricky question.
That's a hard question. Maybe a 90 degree.
It went up a lot. I think we can summarize it by saying
it went up a lot. Really walking in with her from the second I get out of my car, there's someone, Marcy, and just to see how excited everyone is to see her, the staff, the patients. I'll hear different conversations of the patients like, oh, I got to work with Marcy yesterday. You get to work with Marcy today. I joke that there's a Marcy Club. So if they get to join the Marcy Club, they've had a good stay. It's really changed it and made it a lot better, made my burnout resolve. And, I'm really excited just to bring her in and kind of be the medium for these people to let them, engage with her and feel the powers of Marcy.
So many benefits to the caregivers as well as the patients.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we have had a fun afternoon hanging with Marcy and Peru and both of you. And thank you so much for what you do for our patients and for these beautiful dogs. And it's always a delight to have them and you with us.
And us. Remember that. And us.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm just kidding.
Starting with you. I just want to acknowledge we see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much for having us.
No one
we
else
appreciate
does.
it. Yeah, no one. we live in the shadows.
And then, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask Peru and Marcy if they have something they wanted to add to the conversation here, since it's been mostly about them. Ladies, what would you like to say?
Yeah, Marcy.
Aww. They have some words to share.
They did. They did. Deep, meaningful statements here.
Poignant.
Yeah, but I just want to thank all of you as well. I know you guys make a big impact on, patients, staff, all of us in general. You made my day better for sure by being here. So thank you for being here. To learn more about Adventist Healthcare's rehab, visit adventistrehab.com. You can also support Adventist Healthcare's rehab facility dog program by visiting give.classy.org/Richie. Dr. Kirsten Ricci, a physiatrist at Adventist Healthcare's rehab, is raising funds for the program by climbing 3 mountains in 3 days and climbing 29,029 feet, which is equivalent of Mount Everest vertical elevation. Your donation supports ongoing research about the benefits of facility dogs and their continued care. We would also like to hear from you. Let us know if you like the podcast by leaving a review, or you can email us at podcast@adventisthealthcare.com and let us know what healthcare topics you would like to know more about. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you can get new episodes. Thank you and be well.